In this video, it's the Element Enduro Comp Fox, potentially the best RC crawler kit that Element has ever put out. I am very excited. We're going to get it out of the box, we're going to put it together, and I'm going to show you my top tips and tricks that you need to watch out for as you put this together. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Troy. This is Roadside RC. You'll tend to find me bashing or crawling or drifting or racing, plus doing product review videos and how-tos. Let's get started with tip number one. Tip number one is with any Element RC thing, you never throw away the box. They always have something really cool for you to use inside the box. That is awesome. Thank you, Element, by the way, for doing that. I've used multiple of these for different things now. It's always really cool. To build this kit, here's all the tools that you will need. A pair of shock pliers comes really in handy, especially if it's the kind that helps you install ball studs. We used two different metal rulers here to measure the different lengths of the rod ends in order to triangulate some of what was in the instructions. Electric screwdriver along with the 1.5, 2, and 2.5 millimeter speed tips. Some green slime, the normal little T-wrench, a pair of needle nose pliers, some kind of side snips to get things off the parts trees, a knife, thread locker, very important to have thread locker, thank you, and some locking pliers to help also with the assembly of the rod ends. I can have a link down in the video description to all of these tools so that if you don't have some, you can easily pick them up. We literally are only at the second step of the instructions, and there's already kind of a problem here. So it tells you 52 tooth gear goes onto this one. It says 53 tooth gear goes over here. Great, that's fine, except you don't want to put that one on there. So as it shows in the next step, so you're going to get to this step, you're going to assemble it like it says, and then you're going to get here, and it's going to say go all the way back to page 16, where you have three different overdrive options with this vehicle. That's what you want to do. My high recommendation is that you use the 5426 tooth setup on the rear of the vehicle. That'll slow the rear down a little bit and give it the most overdrive that you can get with the factory gear sets. It's really cool that Element actually provides these different gear sets. I really love that. They have you go with a moderate overdrive, which I think is only something like 6%, and this overdrive option 2 gives you something like 12%. 12% in the world of overdrive is still very minimal. But what's important here is they tell you to assemble it, and then, oh, by the way, you have optional assembly instructions, which changes everything that you've done back over here. So we have to actually change and choose which gear we're going to do here, not here. As you assemble the transmission, it has this super fancy, I mean, really, this color on here looks quite nice. These two plates here for the transmission and for the motor mount. It doesn't in the instructions claim that you want thread locker on any of these 6 screws, but that is a metal screw going into a metal piece there. I would highly recommend putting a little bit of thread locker on it. It'll just save you from those coming loose while you're out there on the trail, which will not be good. So still page 6 right here, this is where you're putting in your rear diff gear. Now let me be honest, like, it shows one direction going in, but there's nothing physically keeping you from putting it in the wrong way. So be very careful as you're assembling this diff gear. It needs to have the big ring gear to the right. If you have it the other way around, there's nothing keeping you from actually assembling it backwards. If you have it the other direction, your wheels are going to turn backwards. I don't know how well this is going to come across in the video, but on the axles, there's actually a little mark right here. And then on the C-hubs, 2 more little marks. Now, there's nothing keeping you from putting this on in basically any silly direction that you want to put it in. All right, you can literally bolt it on in any of them. Clearly, that isn't going to work very well. But I think what they're trying to tell us here, I don't see anything in the instructions about it whatsoever, but I think what they're trying to tell us is that you kind of want to use between those 2 marks. Now I'm going to use the one, I'm going to try to line it up with that top mark, right, like here. So that mark is pointing to the top of the 2 marks here on the diff case. That is going to cock this whole back and give this whole front end a little bit of caster. In general, that when you add a little bit of caster to the front end of a crawler, this is the front axle that we're building, it helps with steering a little bit. Top of page 7, you're putting together the portal boxes. and it actually calls out very discreetly a 2.5 by 12 millimeter pin. This is important because in this same bag you have these pins and you have the pins for the wheel hexes. They're not the same diameter, they're not the same size, and so it is possible to put these smaller pins, I'm guessing these 2.5 by 12 I guess are bigger than your typical wheel hex, because what we ran into is we screwed it up and these don't go in there. And so what you have to do is you have to actually make sure the bigger pins that are involved at this stage go in the portal box. The smaller pins are the ones for the wheel hexes. Stage 9, assembling the rear axle. Started to get us a little bit nervous. Showed making these rod ends that lock out the rear axle. Shows that it's all in bag 5. It is not in bag 5. All of the things that it appears we need are all in bag 6, which it doesn't reference here for another couple steps. So just FYI, don't get to this step and be like, oh my gosh, they left out my parts. I can actually see them right there. 1, 2, those are the little links that we need, and all the different ball ends are right here. Page 10 up here, gate 2, we're working on some really wildly curved front links. I've never seen some front links curved that much, but it shows needing it 101 millimeters, and unfortunately all the things in this manual, it says image is not to scale. If Element RC Team Associated, if you'd put these to scale in here, it would help us so dramatically. It also shows that these rod ends are screwed all the way in, and then it shows 101 millimeters from this side all the way over here to this side. Well, how do you really measure that as much? It's really, really hard. So what we did is used one straight edge this way to kind of give us an idea of where that 90 degrees is, and then have the other one come in like this. And then that way we get to 101 millimeters. We can measure it on this side. Is that right? Is that wrong? I think that makes sense because that's us matching what they show here in the manual, but it is definitely not as straightforward as you would get otherwise if you were just measuring from end to end. We made a choice earlier and it had unintended consequences. So if you remember from putting on these C-hubs, the caster blocks, we clocked them back a little bit in order to add additional caster to the front end of the truck. Well, when you do that, when you get to this step, turns out that's not going to work. It's not leaving enough room for that tie rod that goes across and ties the two front axles together. It doesn't leave enough room for the drive shaft to get back in here eventually. So what we're going to do is actually swap the mounting to the top up here of these upper arms instead of the bottom. You see right here it is attached to the bottom. It is hitting where the drive shaft, the input is to the differential. So we're going to switch this to the top. Okay, still here on page 10. Now we're working on the rear links. Two problems that I think Element has here with the instructions. One, it says that the longer side of the link has a straight rod end, but we only have 3 total straight rod ends that are included with the kit. 2 of them were already used up here at the front, right here, just as they previously told us to do, which means we only have 1, but yet you need 2 because we're making 2 links. I think it's wrong anyway. I think they actually mean for them both to be offset, and what we're going to say is that they need to be offset in this kind of direction where it's curved towards this direction on this side and then that direction on that side, and then that way it'll actually mount up closer to straight where each one of them are going to mount. The other problem, that was just problem number 1, the other problem is it says that this link from end to end is 144 millimeters, but there is no way to get it that short. If you measure that link just like they show, it gets to about 149, maybe something around that length, and it is absolutely screwed all the way down. So I think they got the length wrong and they got the description wrong. This is supposed to be a curved link, and this is going to end up being about 149, not 144. Page 11 up here at the top, you're actually putting the center skid now into the chassis. But note that it actually doesn't tell you to put a screw in there yet. But the problem with that is that the center skid keeps falling out. Well, the next couple steps here are making more links. they're making more links that go in, and the whole time you're doing it, the center skid just keeps falling out. So what we're doing is going ahead and putting a couple of these set screws into it, not all the way, but just enough to help hold the skid so that it just stops falling out. Up to page 12, and we're down here installing the drive shafts, or building the drive shafts, and the instructions have another oops in them here. There's two different lengths of these center metal male portions, and there is actually two different lengths of these female portions. There's three of them that I'm guessing are the 33 millimeter length, and there's one of them that's longer. The center piece here, again here, the center piece is actually different lengths. There's one longer, one shorter. However, when it tells you to install the drive shafts, or to assemble them, it says the front gets a 33, a 33, and then a 48 male, and the rear gets a 33, 33, 48. That makes no sense. One of these is dramatically wrong. One, you don't have the parts to actually make two drive shafts that are the exact same dimension, and two, you don't want to, because the front is going to be dramatically shorter than the rear. So what we did, our assumption is that the longer male piece and the longer female piece go together, and that those will go on the rear. Our guess is that these drive shaft length for the rear are wrong in the instruction manual. We are now on to page 13, the shocks. And notice here on the shocks that as we put the O-rings in and the spacers in, it tells you to put some of the shock fluid in there. But instead, we're going to use some of this Factory Team green slime that Team Associated makes. And in place of that shock fluid, we're going to use this. And that helps make sure that your shocks will be less prone to leak and better overall performing. I'll make sure to leave a link to this down in the video description so that you can get some of it if you need. You see here, red O-ring, a shock ring spacer, another red O-ring, we think, and then it says a 3x5 by 0.3 millimeter washer. Doesn't exist. On this parts tray, there are some itty bitty little washers, but they're the wrong size. My expectation is that this is supposed to go in and help squish these O-rings down. It just doesn't exist, and so I don't know if we're going to need it or not. I noticed as I tried to put this on without anything else in there, it still doesn't actually screw all the way down. But oh my gosh, I feel like we are missing this little washer. As you go to put on your shock rod ends, please use a pair of shock pliers. These are the ones from Upgrade RC, but there's a bunch of different ones out there. You do not want to scratch that shock shaft. You do not. It will lead to leaks, it will lead to issues, it'll lead to binding. So please use an appropriate set of shock pliers so that you do not scratch those shock shafts. Bottom of page 13, we're still building the shocks, and we're still finding where maybe the instructions aren't quite right. Right here, it is showing a shock cap. It is a bleeder shock cap, and you need a 2x4 button head cap screw. And we were like, hey, we don't have any 2x4 button head cap screws. So then we started to look at our caps. Guess what? Our caps are not the bleeder cap style. I think our shocks are going to rub subpar. We don't have any bladders to go in the top. It's not asking for any bladders to go in the top, which is something you would normally have on shocks. And you can't do the bleeder screw appropriately because we don't have a bleeder cap. This kind of spring and shock perch right here, it's not a locking spring perch, and so a lot of the times these can, on a trail, you hit a rock or something, they come up, they can get lost because they're not locked onto that bottom cup, or they're not locked onto the spring. What I recommend, they already have little holes in here, is you can actually run a zip tie through just like this, and the zip ties through the plastic perch and through the very bottom of the spring. And then when you put that zip tie on and you clip it off, now all of a sudden, even if it comes loose on the trail, you won't lose it. We are still page 14. We're attaching the front shocks, and up here it says a 3x20 button head cap screw to attach the bottom of the shock for the front. On the rear it says a 3x20 button head cap screw, but guess what? They give you two different lengths. There's a 20 and the other one's like a 24. And so we are choosing to put the 20s in the front because if you put the 24s in, it actually sticks out like 4 millimeters past the other side of the mounting here. And so we'd rather it not do that on the front with all the other linkages. We'll deal with that on the back. So again, instructions appear to be wrong, or the screws that were provided are the wrong ones. We are officially done with the building of the whole truck. I'm really excited to get this thing out there and test it. I really hope it is good. I really expect that it is a good crawler based on my history with previous Element vehicles, but I'm going to be honest with you. The build quality that's left over, the instructions, the quality of the instructions, all of the missing or inaccurate information in the instruction manual has given me a lot of question of like, did we build it right, really? And is it really right? Are the parts in here really the right ones? I'm already seeing bubbles coming out of the shocks. Like, I am pretty confident that those shock caps that are on here are wrong. I'm pretty confident that we're going to be coming back in here, especially on the front, and actually putting in a bigger spacer because the top of these shocks looks like it gets right up against the chassis. So it's like they told us to put the wrong spacers in here. There's a lot of stuff like that that just feels slightly wrong, and I'm really not excited about the fact that I'm having to figure out their kit versus them having done the homework and provide all the appropriate parts and the correct information in the instructions from the beginning. So, all right, I hope this video was useful for you. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions about what we did, or comments about maybe some different tweaks that you did while building it. I will end up with a whole playlist for this Enduro Comp Fox, different tweaks that we do to it, the full assembly with more parts, because we still need to put a radio and a receiver and a servo and tires and wheels and a body. We still have more to do to get this thing fully up and running. So all those videos will be over in that Enduro Comp Fox playlist. I hope to see you in one of those. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.